So anytime that a Java file ends in tester, then we expect its output to have a very constrained form, where the output consists of 2n lines, so some even number of lines, and where the first line has the following form: maybe a tag, a colon, and this part is optional, and then some value, and then the word expected with an uppercase e, lowercase x, and so on, a colon, a space, oops, sorry, and then also some other value. And then you can have another one. You could have another tag, and another one, the word expected. And so the tag doesn't have to be tagged. It could say value 2, or v2, then expected, and then another value. So some string, a colon, and a value, or just value, and then expected, and a value. And so all that the checker then does is it looks at for this format, and then it checks whether the values match, of course. So sometimes I will provide a tester, and it'll run your program, and it'll produce whatever your program produced, together with what I think it should have produced. And in that case, when they match, then it's good. Sometimes I ask you to provide a tester, simply so that you get into the habit of writing a tester on your own every time that you're doing any kind of work, because this kind of work by designing the tester together with your program is a very powerful and useful technique. And so this format, I think, I hope, is dead simple. Even number of lines. First line has the value that actually prints out, preceded by some optional label. The second line is the word expected has to be just so, and then whatever is expected. The checker is smart enough to know that floating point numbers are approximate. So if the expected value is like 3 and the actual value is 3.0, it should pass it. So that's the format that we're going to be using right now. Like I said, later on, towards the middle of the semester, we're going to be using JUnit, which has a more formalized way of doing it. But it's just enough extra work to learn JUnit that I figure we'll have to just take our time with it. Okay. The next question we had was... then the question is, what exactly is a draft? And the rules for what a draft is are going to change with every assignment, and so you kind of have to read through the text of the assignment to see what this time a draft would be. So if we see what the current assignment said, was it homework 1? Here it says, for the first one, the draft should compile and modify the array in some way. So here the idea was that, well, it's just a draft. Maybe you didn't get the thing just so this was supposed to swap, if you remember, was supposed to swap the maximum and the minimum. So in your draft, if you simply swap the first and the second value, that'll be plenty good for the draft. That way it modified it in some way. So why am I making you do this? So that you look at the assignment and you try something out, and that maybe you realize that you don't understand what the assignment is asking to do, and then you can ask questions on Piazza. So even though in this case you didn't get the whole thing done, and I've seen some Piazza dialogues where someone said they couldn't find the smallest, they couldn't find the largest, they couldn't do this or that fiddly thing, and that's fine, right? You have a few more days to do that, but I want you to get going quite early, because I think every one of you, after having submitted the stuff, will agree that if you had started with this thing on Saturday afternoon, it would not come to an end by midnight. Right? If maybe there's 3 or 4 very talented people in the class that can whip this stuff up really quick. But I would imagine for most of you, it's going to require several days of trial and error and to get this thing right. And so the draft is there to make that happen. So in part B, it says, the draft should compile and print something of this form. If the draft says, Fred expected Wilma, that's a perfectly good draft. In fact, you could probably, if you wanted to be unpleasant, you could just write a 2-line program, system.out.println Fred, system.out.println expected Wilma, and that would fulfill the letter of the law here. Now you might say, I did that, and then the NetBrat thing gave me a less than perfect score. And that is so. NetBrat is not smart enough to know where the draft ends and where the real thing starts. So in the draft, you don't have to shoot for a perfect NetBrat score. In the draft, NetBrat will give you good feedback. It'll tell you if you misnamed the file. It'll tell you that. For example, I've browsed through some of the things that you guys turned in, and there was one NetBrat report where it complained that it could not compile homework1.java. And then I looked at this file that was submitted, and there was a good reason it couldn't compile it, because it had a package. It said package Fred class homework1, and then it's not going to work. So that's good feedback for you to know that if you turn it in like that, you're going to get 2 points for effort out of 24. And so you need to fix that. You need to figure out how to make NetBeans not make a package in this case. By default, it likes to make a package, but right now we're not doing any packages. So the third one says the draft should compile with a tester. It doesn't mean that it has to pass the tester, but it should compile. And there's another good reason for that. The tester asks for... Thank you. Stupid. The tester checks that the API is in a particular way, so it checks that the method is actually called comparative, for example. Notice actually that the tester does a little more than that. This line here, where it says comparable P3 equals new point, will fail to compile if point does not implement comparable. So I've crafted this tester so that it checks that. And so that gives you good feedback. It tells you that point needs to implement comparable, and you, for whatever reason, you forget to do that. Or, like if you do something crazy, like supply your own comparable class. Oh, I don't even know what would happen then. Or don't supply your own comparable class. So anyway, so that's the idea of this. Like any new system, at first it's going to be a little strange, but after a couple of weeks, I think it'll become second nature to do it. The other thing that I want to say is, every once in a while, I see a student who gets so taken with NetBrat that they start coding in it, that they keep fixing up their thing inside NetBrat as if NetBrat was an IDE. And of course it's not, and I don't want you to do that because I want you to take advantage of NetBeans and all it has to offer in terms of code completion and all of that good stuff. So really, don't use NetBrat to make... If NetBrat fails, go back to NetBeans, fix it up in NetBeans, and then paste it in one more time. All right, so those are the questions that... Oh, yeah. No, here's someone that said, when I call homework 1A from my tester program, it asks for a constructor. Okay, that one is hard to understand without the code. So next time when you guys ask a question about mysterious things happening, paste in enough code that one can try to follow, and paste in the error message. So that's another good thing about NetBrat. It gives you an error message in text. You can just paste it in, and then I have an idea what actually is going on. There's so many different things that can go wrong that without the error message, I'm a little bit at a loss. So I want to set the stage that I'm more than happy to talk about anything about the homework during the lecture. And so if you have a question now that you want to shout out, go for it.
What are the HTML files supposed to be named? Is there...
Oh, I don't care. I don't care what you name it. And in fact, in a couple of weeks, I will stop asking for them because, of course, I can run that just as well as you can. The reason that I asked for it right now is I just wanted to make sure that everyone goes to NetBrat and does their thing. But in the future, in a week or two, you won't have to put them in anymore. All you'll put in is the Java file. Oh, one more request, please. Please don't put in zip files. Just dump in the Java files into the Dropbox. I know that one section last semester asked everyone to zip things up, and I'm not saying it's bad, but with the Dropbox the way it is, it just helps us out if we don't have to unzip things. All right. Any more questions? Yeah.
If our code passes both the NetRat test, would that mean we finish the homework?
Not necessarily, because NetRat is just a stupid little system. It just does kind of the smoke test, the basic test. For this very simple assignment, it may well be. But it's still, you're the judge of it. And also what sometimes happens is that the instructions will say you have to do things a certain way. So last semester, for example, I had a bunch of assignments that said, using 2 nested loops, produce this piece of art. And there would always be one student who, instead of writing a loop, would write 200 statements. And that, of course, would not really be right. So that's why I want the grader to have enough time to actually look at your solution and try to make sense out of it. So what NetRat is, it gives you assurance that you named the class the right way, that you named the methods the right way, that you're kind of doing the basic thing that I'm asking for. And so you don't have to to worry about that. Ultimately, it is up to the grader. Oh, wait.
Go ahead and make sure that works.
Okay. I'll just give it a minute.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm
it's-
one of the new techs, Andrew.
Okay, it's not accessible. Okay, hang on.